Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, we're going to go over something that was requested multiple times. And I know I made a video on this in some ways, but people wanted more specific. So today, we're going to talk about some of the stages of regret avoidance feel after losing you. Okay. Now, these stages don't always happen in order, or they're not on like a rigid, strict timeline. Okay. Some people actually skip some stages or avoid certain things, or you're not aware of them because it's emotionally suppressed, especially if they're emotionally guarded, okay? Also, this can happen even if they are the one that walked away or you're the one. It doesn't matter why they lost you. This can still happen. And I think that's very important to recognize because a lot of folks think, okay, this will only happen if I'm the one that leaves. No, I've seen it both ways. But people regret things when they're able to reflect away from it. Unfortunately, this is not always the best option if you want the relationship to work because there's a less chance of you guys making a successful relationship if you're having this continuous breaking up type of situation. However, if it's out of your control and you still want to know, does your partner regret it? Are they going to come back? Are they going to change things so that the relationship can resolve? Yeah, that happens. And so we're going to talk about it. But I think people get most caught up into the very first one. Often avoidance, the very first stage of leaning towards their regret is actually not regret at all. It's feeling lighter, feeling free, feeling happy, that the relationship is no longer there in their perspective to which they may perceive the relationship was an emotional burden. That doesn't mean you're a burden. That's not what I'm saying. Being in a relationship is very exhausting for anybody who's in a relationship, right? If anyone's been in a relationship, there are moments where you just have to bottle up some feelings, where you have to adjust things, where you have to change things that you didn't want to change. I should know. I'm in a relationship and I'm telling you, not all relationships are not rainbows and butterflies. At least mine isn't, right? And most couples will say that. Is it a very wonderful and fulfilling concept in your life? Yes, right? I wouldn't trade it. I'm very happy, but they can be a lot, right? And so avoidance, even more particularly unhealed avoidance, right? They may feel that they're so focused on their own internal discomfort that once that discomfort is removed, they feel lighter and free, which is why you're seeing them actually be more happy. It is a genuine happiness. However, it's not a lasting happiness. People get confused because it does look kind of genuine. It's not fake, but it's just not lasting, okay? And what ends up happening is they start realizing this lighter, free feeling is running out because, as I'd mentioned, relationships to most people are actually very valuable. Even if it's frustrating at first, the relationship in of itself feels so wonderful to most people, right? Because you have somebody that can understand you. Even if it was very annoying and frustrating in the moments of the frustration, when you look at the overall concept of a relationship, they can be fulfilling to most people, and avoidance are no different. Once they remove their barriers that they had, they start realizing, actually, I am in a little bit of denial of why this relationship failed. So that's the second stage, right? After feeling lighter and more free, that doesn't last. Now they're in denial. And now you can start seeing distractions show up, which is different than feeling lighter or free. Sometimes people blend these two. They're not the same thing. Because feeling lighter and free and happy, it's an actual moment. It's an actual feeling. It's not a battle, okay? It doesn't mean they're going to be going out all the time and avoiding their feelings. No, they actually kind of feel good. But it's very short-lived. The next stage is they're actually not feeling good, but they're trying to make it look like they're feeling good, not necessarily to trick you, but because they are trying to distract themselves from the reality that you're no longer there. These types of common behaviors look like they're keeping busy continuously. They might be going to a lot of different places that they usually wouldn't do, right? They're out of their own character. They might avoid places that remind them of you. They may seem very emotionally detached from even who they typically are, right? So they're like not even the person, like not just their attachment style. Of course, that's not going to change, but their hobbies are different. They're trying new things, and it's not in a happy way. It almost feels like they're a different person, and that's because their normal, typical day-to-day life is a reminder of you. So they need to be somebody different to remove themselves from that person who loves you, which is their typical self. So let's say this typical person, let's say your ex, he's an avoidant, he's a guy, and he typically, let's say he likes going on walks, he likes hiking, he likes running, he likes going to the gym. That's not out of his character, but now his new thing is he's going, I don't know, deep sea diving in Spain. So now he's flying across whatever. And he's also going to Mexico to do this one thing. And now he's trying to see if he can go to the rainforest in South America. So he's like trying all these new things, which is out of his character, right? It's very different from feeling lighter and free, which is you just feeling maybe more excited about your newfound freedom, trying new foods. But it's not to such an exotic sense. Detached sense to which this person is now changing their persona and personality. Whereas when somebody is distracting themselves, you're seeing a more prominence in moving away from who they truly are. Often avoidants are taught to suppress emotional vulnerability. So when that suppression, their typical techniques are no longer working, they're going to ramp it up. They're going to Brazil to travel. They're going to Spain to do this. They're going to Italy. They're hanging out with all these people they used to not hang out at. They're going to different bars and different scenes that they normally did not go to when you knew them because they're trying to avoid the feeling. However, it doesn't last, right? And they have this crash effect. And so what ends up happening is the third stage is actually nostalgia and the memory triggers. This individual, which you might not know, they start remembering good times, right? Remember we talked about relationships can be very frustrating. However, most of the time, they're actually very fulfilling for most people, including avoidance. They're not thinking of the frustrating parts anymore. They already processed that. Now they're remembering the good stuff, the laughs, the inside jokes, your smile, your comfort, your presence. And sometimes what happens is they might look at old texts or videos or photos. They're not going to admit this to you, but they will. They'll reflect upon these things. They might listen to songs that remind them of you. They may want to revisit places you've been together, actually. I know it sounds weird, but sometimes you'll see that they'll revisit those things to kind of remember. Sometimes they want to honor those memories, and they're hoping that the pain will go away if they look at these things. But what ends up happening is an emotional realization, which is the next step. They actually start realizing what's happening. They realize they truly feel your absence. Feel it, not just notice it, they feel it. And they start missing your emotional support and companionship. They may feel a void, an emptiness without you. And it's not loneliness like they're needy or they need you. No, it's different. It's not about the fact that they just need anything. It's actually particularly you. And so that's why these trips to Spain or whatever's going on, they cannot use that any longer to suppress this feeling because nothing can fulfill it. And so they might reach out to you subtly during this emotional realization. You might actually see liking posts or random text. Some avoidants at this time, they may actually reach out to you and say, hey, let's be friends. Or they may say, let's get back together. And if that doesn't happen, we'll see the next stage, okay? Which is reflection and regret. Usually this happens if the avoidant is a little bit more further, they're not as far along on their healing journey, right? Because some avoidants will not reach out with the emotional realization stage. Some of them will, and then you guys can get back together, etc. But some of them go more into a reflection, regret type of stage to which they replay what went wrong and what they could have done differently. They may ruminate about the relationship. Sometimes this happens when when they block you, actually. A lot of people think if a person blocks you, that means they don't want to talk to you. No, sometimes they block you because they can't stand the memory of you. I'm not making excuse. I'm telling you the truth. And when you are blocked, it allows them to reflect and regret without being interrupted in their thoughts. Because if you do reach out, and I'm not saying you shouldn't, that's normal, they might actually face the feelings that they did something wrong and they're not ready to face it yet. And so they actually are replaying what went wrong and what they could have done differently. They ruminate about the relationship. They may talk about you with other people, and they may actually express guilt. Even if it's just to themselves, you guys won't know this though. But often avoidance process regret later and the emotions catch up to reality. So now we're talking about more so avoidants who are less healed, right? Because we had mentioned the emotional realization, if they're a little bit more on the healing process, they're going to reach out then. Now, if they're less healed, this is when they reach out after that regret period. It's going to be more like they're testing the waters, right? And they're going to try and establish if you still care about them, if they're allowed to come back. Are you mad at them? Because after they regret and they realize what they did, they think, wow, I put this person through a lot. Do I even deserve to come back to them? And so they may try to reestablish contact, and it may be casual check-ins. Hey, how have you been? Comments about your posts or liking your pictures, watching your stories. They may actually apologize. I see that. They will apologize and even express how much they miss you, But they still might not say, hey, let's get back together, because they don't feel like they're ready for that. However, the next stage is either acceptance or reconnection, okay? They may try to reconnect with you and you might reject them, honestly. And if you reject them, what happens is they try to move on even more seriously, or they ramp up their ability to try and win you back. Now, if you do allow them to come back, often what happens is they do make genuine change, especially in areas that was the reason you guys broke up. If you guys broke up because, let's say, they crashed out and said, I don't want this, like, I don't want commitment, you're going to see them not avoiding, they're going to try and be less angry, right? Because maybe they were angry, they crashed out, they broke up with you, even though they shouldn't, and they regret that. They're going to try and fix that one thing. And then what can happen is you can see them wanting to heal and branch out in other areas to heal their attachment issue, okay? So I hope this video was helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I will see you in the next one.